All right, and now I'm going to get out of here so you and Anna can talk about Resistance of Vision.
So Anna, I know what it's like to run a film festival. I helped Beloit International Film Festival out of Beloit, Wisconsin, and I used to help run the Hollywood Film Festival, which was really interesting. So I love picking the films. So what I saw so far, I love the films. Talk about how this started.
Yeah, so Jeff Ross, who runs San Francisco Indie Film Festival, and then there's a number of other festivals under that umbrella. There's Doc Fest, there's a Green Film Festival, there's a Shorts Film Festival. Had approached me and had this idea of a traveling festival of social justice cinema. He, for some reason, doesn't have enough film festivals to run, and because the Human Rights Watch Film Festival had concluded after 30 something years and was really well respected, and he had got this sort of inspiration from Wild and Scenic, which is an environmental film festival. It does a sort of traveling festival. And so yeah, he approached me, knew that I had time in my schedule as well, and had thought, given I mean, for him the impetus was really the election and wanting to do something. For me, I've sort of seen the deterioration of the public discourse for a long time, and so I really loved this idea of using cinema to get people together, for movement building. I'm thinking of this not as a traditional, this is going to go play in cinemas, and the audience is going to be the audience for your independent or art house film. That I really want this to be booked by activists and organizers, as an opportunity to get people in spaces together to build solidarity and to actually, do real work.
Well, it's interesting. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina right now, but I still live in Los Angeles, obviously, with all the changes. So I've seen the film festival will change a great deal, traveling to a lot of them cross country. And I started saying film festivals were dead in 2015 because I saw the evolution of them changing. Who could have seen Sundance? Well, I did, moving from Park City to Boulder. I picked Boulder before they even thought about it. I said, that's the right place to have it.
Yeah.
So I've seen what's happened with Atlanta. I've seen what's happened with Nashville, Chicago, all of this stuff. I think this is a brilliant idea. What bothers me is there's so many great films, but there's not always the outlets to go see the follow up after we do that. I always follow up with the films. I don't care if it's 2 years ago. I'm still talking about those great films until they come out to the streaming service, and then I'll still talk about them. So I like this idea. I really believe this could work in a different way because I don't think anybody's ever done it before.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there are, some festivals that have done little bits of traveling, right? So Sundance has a program that people can book, right? There's a shorts program where people can show it in their cinema. But and
But
then there's,
that's not this though.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
different.
Yeah. And I think Wild and Scenic, this idea of, they have this program of environmental films and they're going to activists and organizers who care about environmental issues. So that's really sort of the inspiration. So it does exist, but we're trying to do something a little different with it, in that we're focusing on a number of different issues, and trying to add as many intersections as possible in each program. So there's ways in, for, whatever folks are most concerned about right now. There's a film in there that speaks to an issue that folks are organizing around. So yeah, so that's the sort of idea. And for these short filmmakers, so right now we're focusing on shorts. It's kind of like, a distribution, a theatrical distribution, that short films don't get. So we are paying the filmmakers every time their film screens. And that's one of those things that, not a lot of festivals are able to do. And so the hope is to really build a circuit for those films. I talk about what this does for the audiences, but for the filmmakers, it's an opportunity to get their film onto more screens in front of more audiences, and to actually hopefully make a bit of money doing so.
I see. I really, really like that because when I'm talking to a lot of these filmmakers, I'm like, I always tell them, let me know where you're going next. If you
Mhm.
don't have a publicist, or even if you have a publicist, because I want to talk about it to get the audience to go out to support that, because that's most important. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of us left. I've been doing this since what, really since 1991 when I came out of home video, but I've been doing interviews for what almost 40 years. So I'm really retired. But the problem is, the reason why I'm going to all these festivals and things is because they're inviting me because of our numbers, so we could help get the word out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I never want to say no, and I know what it's like to pick these great films. And hey, you should have this film in your festival. It's not going anywhere right now. They don't know where to go. Give them a waiver, let them go in because they're great films. And I love talking about those until the day I die.
Yeah, yeah. I love, I've made a couple of films, but I really identify as an exhibitor. And for me, building audiences for really brilliant cinema is like that is my passion, is getting people, hopefully in physical spaces. We do actually have a virtual platform as well, for accessibility reasons, I imagine there are going to be places where it's going to be hard to get a physical space to show some of these films in with the climate in certain parts of the country, really in all
Hmm.
the country. But what I'm most interested in is getting people into physical spaces together, to watch to experience cinema together in real time. And then, the focus of this in particular is to get activists and organizers to then think about, okay, what do we do? What do we do now? We're watching this film. We're talking about this issue. We're talking about attacks on trans healthcare. We're talking about, attacks on the environment. We're talking about. So now, what do we do? We're not going to just sit here and talk about, the camera angles and the shooting ratio. We're going to be talking about what now. What do we do about this? Who is doing work around this issue? How do we, collaborate? How do we get more people involved and more people active in solutions and in fixing things?
One of the things I liked about what you guys coming up with this is, for example, if I'm cross country, hey Brian, are you in town? The publicist always says, no, I'm not. What do you have coming up? Well, we got this coming up. It's the short amount of time that it, because usually you would know eight months to a year in advance, sort of like the Super Bowl or the Grammys or the Oscars. Now it's like you may know, if you're lucky, a month and a half. I'm literally gonna run back. I'm gonna from here. I'm gonna go to the Nashville thing for the Country Music Hall of Fame for a film for on Brenda Lee that I've been pushing since the last year. She's still alive. She's 84, based on how her health is that day. But I've been helping Barbara Hall, her, and then from that, I'm running to the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival, and then waiting for the announcement for the Los Angeles Jewish Film Festival. So I'm literally going cross country, but it's about supporting those filmmakers. That's really why I still love to do this. And so when it comes to those things, I love how that traveling is, because it could work that way, especially with the loss of 5,000 theaters. That bothers me till this day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, any place can be a cinema, right? You
Yeah.
can, you got to think, I don't know, and not non-traditionally about these things. Where
Hmm.
you can gather people and make it dark enough so people can see the image can be a cinema. And so
Yep.
that's really what we're, this first, when we launch it, they're showing in traditional cinemas, the Roxy, the Brattle, Sidewalk. Although I think Mama Film might not be a traditional cinema. I think it's an art space. But when we sort of, start encouraging people to book it, libraries, community centers, schools, wherever people can gather people together, can be a cinema.
Yeah, it is all about that. You show it, they will come. Because I figured this out, and I tell people, and it helps them. Even if you're an average of 6 miles away from going to a theater to see it, still please go out to support the arts. It's about supporting the arts. No matter if it's 10 people in there or 50 people in there, people still want to go out and see a great film. They do. I know, because I've been cross country going the last 8 years and talking to them about these things. And I do challenge Regal Theaters, and I do challenge all these other people, because I have the numbers. I'll get in their face and tell them people do want to see the film. So just show them, they will come.
They want to gather with other people,
Yeah.
this real
Yeah.
appetite to get into spaces with people, to turn off your devices, to have an experience with other people. And I think that, yeah, there'll always be an appetite for that.
Yeah. Who Talk about choosing the films, because I always tell filmmakers, you never know what the process is like. Just because your film didn't get in doesn't mean your film wasn't good. That means there was just one more film that was probably better than yours. And then they go, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of submissions. You just never know.
Well, it's not just about, what's better, that there's this sort of ranking, right? It's putting together a cohesive program. So I would always tell filmmakers, with a feature, your film stands alone. With a short, it's all about the context. It's all about the other films that show with it. And so, there might have been a really phenomenal film, but I already had another film that sort of served that purpose in my program,
Mhm.
right? So there are all sorts of reasons. So I'd say close to half, maybe about a third of the films came from submissions from Resistance of Vision because of a very short timeline. We announced and the calls for entries were open for like a month. So we also reached out to films that submitted to Jeff's other festivals. Doc Fest and Green Fest were the other ones that I looked at submissions and then invited some of those films. But I had these 4 programs sort of ready to go. This idea of labor and housing justice, racial justice, environmental justice, and gender and reproductive justice. And for me, it was really important to show films of communities organizing around an issue. And so there are a lot of those kinds of films in the festival. But then there's, films that really focus on an individual. So Ancestral Call is about an artist, and her art is really, a sort of, for me, exemplifies resistance. And I wanted to make sure that we had, as many different intersections as we possibly could. So, for example, in that racial justice, we have a Muslim filmmaker talking about, a harassment experience that she had. And she also talks about it through the lens of disability and a condition that she had. In the Our Bodies, Our Choice, I wanted to make sure that we had, that we were looking at issues of reproductive justice, but also looking at gender justice and transgender rights. So yeah, so it was just trying to find as diverse a program, as intersectional a program for each one that I possibly could. We have international cinema in there. We have films that deal with disability. In the This is an emergency environmental justice. We have 2 Indigenous films in the program that deal with how Indigenous communities are dealing with climate crisis and environmental justice. So yeah, that's kind of how I was picking films, trying to find, you know, as many different kinds of films as I possibly could. And we have, animation in there as well as sort of traditional, observational and interview documentaries.
You did a good job of all the films that I saw. So congratulations on that, because I always tell people it's not always easy picking them. You know, I'm still finding films. I remember I found Gloria Gaynor's film 2 years ago. The African American Film Critics in Los Angeles didn't even know it existed. I found it in Nashville, Tennessee.
Mhm.
They had no idea. I'm like, how do you guys not know about this? It's really interesting. A lot of the great films are out there. There's no shortage of them that I've seen. The problem is the marketing of them, which has always been my number one pet peeve. Because I'm not that filmmaker. I will never be that. I don't care about that. My job is to help get their word out. That's where we are good around the world at doing that. So that's where my passion comes from, doing that.
Yeah, yeah. My passion is to build audience for these beautiful films that filmmakers have made. And
Hmm.
I think the system is obviously has all sorts of problems that people who, make these stunning works of art are then expected to do everything else, right, in terms of building audience. So I love being the person who can come in and support a really well-made film and say, I can help in terms of connecting your work to an audience.
I got 3 more questions for you. How
Yeah.
did you pick the 4 cities? It was fascinating. I thought Birmingham was really interesting choice. Why'd you pick Birmingham?
Well, okay. So again, this very short timeline. So it was, where did we have relationships? And so San Francisco was obvious because Jeff runs film festivals there. We both know the folks at the Roxy. I work with the Brattle in Cambridge. I used to run the Boston Underground Film Festival, and that was one of the venues. Wichita was because Jeff and I have both collaborated with Leela Meadow-Connors, who runs Mama Film in Wichita. And then we wanted to make sure that we had a venue in the South, because the idea was to try and make sure that we covered different regions. And that everyone that we spoke to said Sidewalk, that is the festival, that is the cinema. They also have a cinema space, that would be really interested in this program. So I reached out to Jessica at Sidewalk, and she was immediately, on board and interested. And so yeah, so that was the idea. We were trying to find, what is an entity, an organization, film organization in the South that would be really interested in this program and really interested in building audience for it. And Sidewalk was the one everyone recommended.
It's an interesting pick, and it's also a good pick. I have a lot of people there who always go to Nashville or Knoxville because I'm helping a lot of the women in film there. Me, the straight black guy from Los Angeles, helping them. But
Hmm.
if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have the numbers that we have today. So I'm always going to go down there and help them with all the stuff because there's some great filmmakers there. It's just and I see the business flockitating there, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
So congratulations on that. Talk about was it Black Tide? I think
Oh yeah.
that was a interest. That was a good film. Talk about picking that one.
Oh yeah. So Black Tide was originally submitted to DocFest. I had to, reach out and invite them. And it was just a really beautiful, it's an animated film that looks at how a community came together to respond to an environmental disaster. So I'm trying to remember the name now. I'm going to look up the description, where this is. Mauritius. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But there was an oil spill that happened in
Hmm.
2020, and the whole film is about, well, one, the sort of horror of that happening, right? Horror of, of oil leaking into the sea, right? And washing up on the coastline and the way that it impacts the wildlife there. And then the rest of the film is about how do people come together and respond to this? How did they take care of each other? How did they take care of their environment? And so that was one of those films that I saw early on and was just absolutely in love with. And for me, exemplified what I think of as resistance, which is, community organizing and responding to crises.
I love that. That's one of the reasons why I liked it when I'm traveling around a lot. I'm talking to a lot of my friends in China. I'm talking to a lot of my friends in Norway, and they believe in things like that. So that's why that's also important to me because not everybody understands, not everybody believes. So it's our job to help. Go see the movie first of all, and then see a different perspective of. Hopefully, you walk out there a different person. Yeah.
Yes.
Last question. Give social media links so people could reach out and support and come see that. And what do you hope the audience takes away by coming to see these films?
So the only social media that we have at the moment is Instagram. So we're Resistance of Vision on Instagram. And that's the place to sort of follow and find out where we're going to be. We also have a page on Eventive. So if you look up Resistance of Vision on Eventive, and in terms of what we want people to walk away with, we want people to walk away with, the contact information of three people that were in the audience that they can, collaborate with, that they can work with. I want them to come away with a real tangible path to action. That you don't just come out and, like a traditional film, you're a festival, you're thinking about the topic and maybe talking to people about the film. I want people to come to these screenings and to connect with activists and organizers and find ways to get plugged in and to be doing things right now. I know that there's a lot of people who are, seeing, just how quickly this country is just deteriorating, right? What little of a democracy we had left, and feeling really powerless, and not knowing what to do. And I want them to come into these spaces and see, okay, this is what I can be doing right now. This is an organization, like Warm Up Boston for our Boston screening that is just going out and supporting unhoused folks in our community. This is a thing that you can do. You can go and you can join them. You can get supplies to people. Like there are places for people to plug in and to be involved.
I got to ask this last question real quick.
Yeah.
Give the dates for Boston, San Francisco, if you know them off the top of your head,
Yeah.
and Birmingham, because I want to see if I can catch one of them cross country. That's why.
Yeah, okay. So on May 1st, that's when the screening in Wichita and Birmingham are happening. So very soon. May 3rd is the screening at the Brattle in Cambridge. And then May 31st, because we're doing it as part of DocFest, that's the screening in San Francisco. And then these programs will be available for anybody to book.
Oh, great. I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can in the middle of that, I'll be in Omaha really soon. So maybe I can just go over there and try to make my presence known that way. Because again, it's about supporting, I could change my itinerary around. So it's just a matter, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for all the questions.